There we go. Okay. Welcome everyone again to the ScreenSaverz event, the roller coaster of design. We are very happy to see you all introducing here in the FigJam board. There is quite some material that Nina and I prepared to make this session as engaging as possible. And we are also very happy to see such a diverse group from so many places. So today we have met on the topic of stakeholder engagement and the fact that it can often be a very emotional roller coaster for designers when we have to deal with people who, have a stake in what we're doing. And Nina is someone with a lot of experience handling that. And she will tell us today about one of her cases she learned over time that helped her. And also we will try to include your own experience and get you to share with us as much as possible. So Nina, welcome. First event for you. So nice to have
Thanks
you.
for having me.
Yeah, please tell us a bit shortly about yourself for those who don't know you yet.
Sure. So my name is Nina. I'm based in Berlin, 7 years already, but I originally come from Croatia. So I'm a very warm Mediterranean. I'm a multidisciplinary designer and design manager. And by multidisciplinary, well, I mean, it's like an umbrella term for all different kinds of design that I did for the past 10 years or more, from branding and art direction to visual communication, graphic design, product design, user experience, and last couple of years, design systems, designing collaboration, designing processes, and creating conditions for great design to happen, and kind of going more behind the scenes, removing myself from the spotlight and helping others thrive and be the frontman of their own show.
Yeah, that's great to hear. So one of the things that we would like to do today is to, like I said, make this interactive and get as much input from you as well. So as I ask one of the first questions for Nina, you're all very welcome to also start filling in the board we have here next to the introductions. And that is, we want to hear what your challenges with stakeholders are. So either in general, what do you think are the biggest challenges, or maybe there are very specific ones we're dealing with right now. Feel free to take the post-it and share. And Nina and I will try to touch on some of those, and maybe some of your own will also get answered or touched upon through the example that Nina will be sharing with us. So Nina, this thing we often notice with people who come to our school or our events is that oftentimes it seems like it's all about the craft and learning the craft and becoming a good designer, but then at some point you realize, oh, if only someone told me that almost half of the work and a big prerequisite for my success as a designer is dealing with stakeholders, the non-craft work, so to speak. And a lot of times it may seem like, oh, but that's for design managers, but actually it turns out it may also be very important for ICs. How did you recognize this in your own example? When did you start to realize this, and how did you start to deal with that? Because it's not something usually you can just look at some article like a Figma tutorial or something.
Yes. Oh, so much realizations. Typically, things like this come in retrospective, right? After doing a lot of mistakes or oversights. And usually when we have someone who is dedicated to our growth, so for instance, if we are part of a design team and have our own dedicated manager, or we are taking different mentoring sessions. So that was my case. Only after I start to be more intentional about where I am and where I want to go, and in terms of my career, in terms of my position, but also observing and reflecting a lot what went well in previous roles or engagements and what could be improved and what was disaster. Only then I was able to see, maybe observe some patterns and observe so many missed opportunities. And over time, as you grow with your craft, but also with your confidence, you are more able to communicate, to elaborate, to position yourself. But that simply comes with time. As you said, it's not something you can just read and that's it. You need to really reflect a lot and internalize all of these observations. Also hear feedback from others. Have as many opportunities to hear what others have to say. How did the collaboration with you go? What did they observe as someone neutral? And starting to observe yourself as an actor. So observe situation, try to detach yourself from what happened in what was a situation, what was a project, and just observe it as a movie where you are an actor just like anyone else. And you're observing what these different people did, said, and what would be alternative pathways they could take to make it more successful.
And I guess it certainly means that you need to, in a way, detach from this identity of just being a designer. You often say that you need to wear different hats, right? Or
Yes.
try to emphasize with other stakeholders in their respective fields. Was that for you as well, this realization that, you need to go beyond just identifying as a designer, as a craft person?
Exactly. So my first bigger breakthrough came when I started doing less hands-on design work and move more towards leadership or more towards helping others and being more person that is behind scenes. And also when I was involved in more strategical projects where I was simply forced to put myself in shoes of others and treat them as users. So on one side, when we are working on a user-facing project, for instance, I was working on a fintech platform many years ago. I was very focused on the user itself, and I wanted to do the best possible design. I wanted to make it look great because there was also ego involved. And as designers, we sometimes have hard time detaching ourselves from the work. And if something looks ugly or not the way we would like it to be, we feel bad about it. And often it's not our decision because there are so many different moving parts in the business and a lot of constraints. But in the end, what people see on the surface is what they base on their assumptions. And then they could also label us and our abilities in that way. So for instance, when I was working on such a platform, there was a case where I simply had ideas how to make it better, but I did mistake in not always connecting it with numbers and not always involving stakeholders in the process. So for instance, I know exactly what would be the right approach. And of course, it was backed with certain insights, certain user research, and so on. But still, I didn't do well enough to translate that insights and these things that are so obvious to me into what other side of the business would value and what matters to them. And I didn't treat my stakeholders as users who also have their needs and their goals and things that they care about that are not necessarily things that I care about. But as a designer, we need to, on one side, protect the interest of the user and make things that are really human-centric and kind of ethical at its core and have this perspective. But on the other side, there is business, there are business numbers, interests, stakeholders, and they have their interests. So we need to find a way to marry, to find kind of a blend between the two, to also be very assertive the way we communicate. So what we are proposing is absolute no-brainer for all sides involved. And those are some of the things that I could do better, for instance, reflecting at roles like that, but simply I didn't know about it. I was just acting out of pure gut feeling, and it only came later when someone was guiding me or when I was being coached, and when I was consciously looking back and seeing particular situations I could isolate and then see, oh, I could totally do different here and everything would be different.
Yeah, yeah. I really like this analogy you said that the stakeholders are just like users, right? Because in a way it helps in the sense that we know how to deal with users as designers, right? So even though like stakeholder management seems like this completely new domain for us, a lot of like the mental framework that we have for work with users, we could reuse that, right? Like empathy and certain workshopping techniques, whatever we have. So it's not really that foreign to us, right? It's more about
Exactly.
taking that mental shift that you could use it there as well.
Yeah, and we have everything it takes, really. We just need to change our perception of these people. And when I say stakeholders, I mean people who are part of our team, who are close collaborators. So, for instance, if you are part of a design team, your fellow designers are your stakeholders sometimes. If you are, let's say, you want to propose a new team ritual, then you have peers from other teams like engineers. Or if you are part of a cross-functional team, your stakeholders are equally designers and engineers, but also product managers and engineering managers, and managers of your peers and so on. And most often when we think about stakeholders, it's those who are owning a certain outcome or who are accountable
Just
for
that
a
person,
certain
right?
decision.
Yeah.
Exactly. And we need to manage all of them. We need to manage our peers to create stronger collaboration, to create more healthy team environment, but also to have our peers on board when we are about to propose something. Who is the most near to us? Who will hold our back? Of course, our colleagues, those that are the most near, who know us. But also you can observe whom do you have the closest connection with? Typically people that you share something with. You are taking part in the same morning stand-up, for instance. You are going for team dinners or taking a coffee. So you already have this sense of connection. And we just need to expand that sense of connection to others and establish some baseline that we can work with later, even if we maybe not necessarily work with them very, very often.
Directly or on a daily basis. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, we've collected some interesting
I'm really curious.
examples here. So let's have a look. So how to get them excited to care about things I care about. Example given sustainability. Nina, I think you briefly touched on that already. So maybe you could offer a comment.
Yeah.
And let's see some more. So how to move stakeholder focus from solution space to problem space. That's a good one. Yeah. Insufficient
Oh,
information
yeah.
from stakeholders in different project phases.
Exactly.
Stakeholders confirm the project, but after a first review of prototype, they expect many changes to happen for the same price. So
Yeah, if you work in an agency.
yeah, in the service business, yes. How to persuade stakeholders to sign time for the research and design process in general. One is, this solution is great, but will take too much time to develop. Can you make it more light, air quotes? Obtaining valuable information from stakeholders who are not familiar with digital products. Yeah, that's a very good one for empathy. And there's often often a lack of understanding about the words used to describe things. Example, user journeys, user needs, pain points. Nina, do any of those sound familiar to you as well from your
Well, so
all
many. I mean, I think we all faced these situations in our work in one way or another. And it's typically situation when someone doesn't understand the importance of something that we believe is so important, right? And how to ensure they do, right? Or sometimes they're interfering too much. And one of my friend wrote me, okay, I'm new in this company, and after literally 1 week, of being there and feeling great about it, they started to give crazy requests. Can we change this? Can we change that? Without any understanding of the of the user experience principles, why that makes sense, what does it make sense for that particular niche of people, and so on. So yeah, I think it's when we look at all of these situations, it's about creating a shared baseline. What we first need to do is establish connection with them, because when we, let's say, come to a new company, even if there are things that we are 100% sure they are working well, it may be that there are completely new rules of the game in a new company. And often we bury ourselves with a lot of work and not really taking a time to really understand what are the dynamics in the company. So on one side, what is the company all about? What is the market? What is the industry? How well is the company doing? But then what is the actual culture? Like, what are the beliefs and behaviors that paint the picture of the culture? And what are the underlying mechanisms? Sometimes you need to go past the honeymoon period and spend some months to see actually what is happening there. And sometimes things can get really nasty and you just realize, oh my God, what did I get myself into? So it's about understanding very well what is the context, who are the moving parts, or who is making a decision, what are the decision-making mechanisms. And then we have, of course, each individual stakeholder. Who are they? What are they all about? And what drives them, and so on. And finally, understanding what is the goal that you're all trying to achieve. So going from point of separation, in which everyone is trying to pursue different agenda, or like us as designers, we have one point of view, one thing that we are thinking about, and those other people have completely different ideas in their mind. So it's useful to find something that can resonate with all of us together and see how we can marry what these stakeholders want with what we are trying to achieve. So let me just open the fig jam. So for instance, how to get them excited about things I care about, for instance, sustainability. Well, you don't just get someone excited, hey, I care about this, why don't you join my fan club? Of course, it's about presenting why you think this is so important. So for instance, if you would like to get involved in more strategic matters in the company and push sustainability through that, it's about creating certain ambassadorship program inside the company, building a case, maybe starting with having conversation in small group of people and seeing if you can really energize them around the topic. What do they think? See, okay, group consisting of 2-3 people says this, so you have already some feedback. What another group thinks about the topic, their feedback. So you take these small conversations as something where you can actually figure out where do you stand and what would be their approach and what would be maybe be their standing. Is this something they're really interested in? And then maybe trying to find some allies across the company, maybe in your own team or in another department, maybe in another business unit where this could be applicable, and see what they have to say about it and kind of start building a case together. So I'm not sure what you meant by sustainability here, because it's a very broad topic, but let's say there is a certain initiative that has to do with sustainability and maybe decreasing carbon footprint of the company, or maybe different ways in which company is operating, and that is being reflected on a strategic level. So it all starts by building a case, kind of driving and engaging smaller group and building momentum and setting up certain goals and milestones. And then after you reach that, what happens next based on the feedback. Does that make sense?
Mina, I think that one was from you, so you're very welcome to join us in the conversation if you want to. Nina, One thing here from my side is that I totally agree that we in different fields have different agendas and so on, but I also feel a lot of times like we think we do, right? But actually we are all already aligned on something, yet we're still fighting each other, right? Because maybe we're not really listening to each other, or oftentimes we just not translating well between the different languages we use, right? Would you say that sometimes it's even better to not immediately push for, let's call it your agenda, right? But rather
Exactly.
ask questions in a way that you realize, well, hey, it's actually, for example, with sustainability, someone in distribution is trying to like cut costs, and maybe some sustainable material may be able to do that. You know, open the space
Exactly.
for this kind of discovery, like you would do with users, like talking to them and interviewing them and seeing what you can learn. Do you have experience with this kind of approach yourself?
Exactly. So it's in the end not about us. Even if it's about us, something that we care about, we need to pack it in a way that it's not about us. It's about other people, and definitely better understanding what is the other side all about.
Mm.
So example very close to my heart is design system, where I had all kinds of situation where I had to engage with other people. When we were in the early stages of the design system, we had to create a movement and kind of create a hype and make people really excited about it, because that was the only way to bring together different groups of people and really be committed to it. The designers, engineers, product managers, product owners.
It's not just a design thing, right? Even though it's called a design
Exactly.
system, it's everyone's impacted. Yeah.
Exactly. Then there was a time where we had to, for instance, defend our design system
Mm.
because it was perceived as a bottleneck, which is very common in the life cycle of design systems. And we had to actually demonstrate why we need to stick with the design system, or not necessarily say like, yeah, you should stick to the design system, that's it. No, simply present facts and say, this is what happens, and it's up to you. You can take the call.
Yeah.
These are the facts that you can work with, and so on. So yeah, it's in the end about finding a common ground with others and hearing what they have to say about it, listening from them, not imposing our agenda or our what we think is right, but actually just being all eyes and ears and seeing what is the dynamic of the group, and what are the potential opportunities on the horizon, and what are the potential issues,
Yeah.
and then seeing how we can kind of take that knowledge and distill it through our insights that we already had and see what will be the best way forward.
It can even surprise you sometimes, right? There's a you see some stakeholder opportunity that you didn't even know is there, and you can jump on it, right?
Exactly.
So you gave us a great segue mentioning the design system case, because we really didn't want this to be just theoretical talk, like high level talk. We wanted to give everyone here today a very concrete example, as much as NDAs and all of this allows, of course, on the Nina story behind building the design system, and she'll say us more about it. And of course, we can always say, oh, it's just one story, right? And how any one of the challenges we've noting on the board there is very unique, but there is a potential for certain universal approach that we will try to distill from this conversation. We have some templates, examples that we will show you, that hopefully will help you understand how Nina, sort of break down and understand how Nina went about her own case. So Nina, let me open this up, and if you're so
Yeah.
kind, and give us a quick introduction here.
So I'll give a very concrete example that I briefly touched upon. So after our design system was already 2 years old, set in motion, healthy, going, problem was that design system didn't look as exciting as it could be, because simply we were taking a very pragmatical approach and basing it on material UI, which is infrastructure that you can take from It's an open source, and you can just repack it and make it in a way that works with you. But it doesn't make your product look exciting or sexy, you know. It's something that is great to get things going, and a lot of teams opt in for such approach, and only those who are really, you know, renowned, large, have huge budgets and large use base, you know, like huge companies that we all admire, they can afford to do something super custom and create their own things. So what happened is that one of the teams was very ambitious, and they wanted to make their product looking amazing, and that was also tied to certain metrics they wanted to hit, some certain business targets, and they wanted to just revamp the whole product and completely leave the design system and do everything custom. And we had a lot of people in the team who wanted to use the design system because for them it was a no-brainer, and those were typically engineers who were well aware of what are the benefits and what is the impact on their productivity. However, designers were, you know, they wanted to do something great, also something that they can be proud of, and I fully understand that point. But they were also aware of the impact and speed the design system has on their workflows. And the biggest detractor was actually a person who was directing the product. And we also had product owners who were kind of, you know, devil's advocate. They can understand both sides well. And we simply had to demonstrate what happens if you continue using the design system versus if you just abandon. But in the end, it's important to understand here that this is not our decision to make. So this is a point where you fully detach yourself from work, because you can do your best work, whatever, but in the end, you cannot force someone to share your perspective. You can just do your best to present them with what you know, but also by listening to what is their fear, what is their, what makes them think the way they think, and so on, to really connect with them.
So one of the things that's really important in such cases is the context, right? And, you know, there's the general context, like the design system was already in place, you know, but the company didn't have the resources. But, you know, without exposing too much, you know, business secrets or personal information, would you say that there was a particular event, a particular situation that stuck in your mind, both in terms of like where and when it happened, and from the interaction that took place that was really important for this to go through successfully?
Yeah, so we had a lot of interactions, actually. So what was really good is that I, as someone who was leading the design system at the time, was having already established operating rhythm. So this situation and this whole change of event didn't come as a surprise, because as one of my roles was being a product owner. So for instance, I had preset meetings with each product owner from other team and other engineering managers and other stakeholders. So I could understand well what is happening, what is the direction they are taking, what are they planning in the next quarter, and so on. So that also gave me opportunity to be a couple of steps ahead. So there was not a situation in which I was shocked. Oh no, this is now happening, we need to react. And this is the key, because once you are thrown in a position to be reactive, you're already losing. You need to be a few steps ahead always know what's probably going to happen, or what are the several avenues you could take.
Yeah. So you mentioned that one of the biggest objections to continued use of the design system in that case was it doesn't look as exciting, it's generic, you know, and the product owner thought that that would, you know, either slow down or would simply be to the detriment of the market acceptance of the product. Now, I could, of course, ask you directly, you with your to continue with the story and see what happened. But actually, what we would like to do for all of you who have joined us today is, given the limited information we could give you, right? So there is Nina, there's a stakeholder. Let's say they have one of those meets, right? And the stakeholder is expressing the concern. How would you approach that specific conversation, right? The person on the other side is saying, hey, I'm going to go forward with the product, not using the design system. And, within that conversation, you need to sort of, at least initially, win back their trust into the product, into your team. So what would be your suggestions? Please use the pink placeholder here, and we're happy to give you a few minutes and see how you would go about it.
Let's make it a 1 minute, so we are on time.
Yes. If anyone would like to also discuss it by actually talking to us directly, you're free and welcome to use either the chat or to just talk to us here on the video call.
So one of the issues was it doesn't look exciting, and it's not exciting enough for sake of sales and presenting that next level product on the market to be better than competition. And on the other hand, it's also about being limited, and a lot of things had to be customly developed anyways, with or without the design system. So they had one idea of what design system would give them, like a promised land, and then in the end it didn't follow up on that surprise, simply because it's not possible. You cannot please everyone. So just curious to see if you have some ideas. How would you approach this situation? You just share whatever thoughts you have.
And remember, everyone, there are no right or wrong suggestions.
Exactly.
Open session. Even if you're completely new to design, you understand people. You are a person, a human. So, whatever comes to mind, please share.
Yeah, exactly. There can be multiple ways to approach a problem.
Nina, any initial thoughts coming up as you're seeing the
Great things, and yes, I will go back to it later. Yeah, but yeah, I will just say great minds think alike. Okay, so shall we
we can
move
go.
on next? Yes, because we are a bit short on time, but please, folks, continue adding.
We will return to your suggestions
Yes,
later.
we will go back to it. Yes, yes, yes.
So, like we mentioned, Nina, sorry for jumping in. There is a certain way that we also teach here at ScreenSaverz that could allow you to like break down your situation and step by step try to create the opportunities for stakeholder engagement. So we use some of the templates we actually have for the classes, and Nina was kind enough to use them as if she would, be using them for her example that she just described. So Nina, please take us through and
Yes.
help us see how we could use your approach, learn from your approach for our own cases.
So what I would like you to take home from this session is that there is a universal approach that we can always take, regardless of the challenge we are facing. And also, as we saw a lot from the challenges that you shared earlier, challenges may differ, but the logic is the same. We need to understand very well the context. So what is the company all about? What is the business type? How is company making money, especially in a more complex setup? Who is paying? What is the financial status of the company? Who is driving decisions? What is also the stage that business is going through? And this is very relevant in current situation where a lot of companies are cutting their budgets and changing strategy radically, having reorgs. It's also about how big is the business or the department that we are operating. What is the strategy? And what I often seen is that a lot of companies don't even know what their strategy is, or strategy is some mystical being sitting on the top of the cloud while mortals in the company don't know about it. They just hear about it, but they don't really know how it relates to what they're working on. And then finally, we have the culture itself. And the bigger the company, it can happen that it's more siloed, that one team has one ways of work, another team completely different ways of work, or where we have people who are longer in the company, who are more like tough nuts to crack, and then we have the new people who are trying to do things differently, so they could be in clash with older ones. So those are all the things that we need to take into consideration and map them, have an artifact where we can keep all of our insights about the company. And it's also about, how are decisions being made, and is there a case that you can look from before, from the past, or maybe you can ask some people who are longer in the company, what was the situation when certain initiative was taken and what was the fate of it. And then another part, very important, is mapping our stakeholders. This can be very useful when you just join the company and you don't know anyone yet, and you need to figure out the complexity and the correlation between different moving parts. But also it's very useful to map in case of a particular project that you are part of, where you are looking into who is your direct collaborator, who needs to be informed, who needs to be directly involved and give their approval, and then who are other people who are maybe not your contributors or not even involved, but maybe they have a strong opinion or strong influence inside the company, and they can either detract your goals, detract what you're trying to achieve, or be your great support because they have a good connection with others. So it's super important to map all these actors inside your company. So in this diagram, for instance, we mark them as inside and outside. So it can be inside your organization, like your department. But if you work in an agency, it can also be people who are maybe partners and not inside the same company you're working in. And then finally, I wanted to add something here that I really want to share with others. And that is another thing we can use. It's called power interest matrix, where once we have a clarity who are our stakeholders, who are our core stakeholders and outside, who do we need to actually keep satisfied versus keep informed or manage closely based on what is their interest in the project or product that we are working on versus their power inside the organization. That's one thing. And once we are clear, typically those who have there is a strong interest and power out of the group that is super important, or also group that we need to keep, in a way, keep satisfied because they still have a strong power. Who are these people actually? So treating them as personas, but of course not dumb personas like archetypes, but rather, okay, this is a person. It's a real person, and you know how they look like, you met them, and maybe there are different personas in different teams, like multiple product managers that you're working with, or multiple engineers. What are their jobs to be done? So I listed here example for a product manager. What is the task they need to do? And then what is the potential friction or concern with using your very own proposed solution, something that you are trying to bring, or something that you're already working on? And what is it that they are trying to achieve regardless? So how can you then marry, where lies your opportunity to marry what they're actually trying to achieve with what you're bringing to the table? And then consequentially, what is the strategy that you can take that would work best based on what do you know about this person? And you can fill out this chart with all stakeholders you are dealing with, for instance, in a project that you are currently at, but also if you are reflecting on your own career, for instance, who are your stakeholders to get promoted? Obviously, your direct manager, but there are certain peers who are aware of your work and who can talk to others and so on. So it depends on what is the actual situation you are trying to figure out.
It's a lot easier sometimes to grasp this whole thing that seems complicated, you know, and overwhelming when you have it mapped out like this, right? You've almost helped yourself get to the answers. Yeah, that's really nice.
Yeah.
So
and I wish I did this, for instance, 5 years ago when I was handling certain projects where I had like a clear overview. Okay, who are my stakeholders? What am I dealing with in the first place? So then how can I communicate in a way that makes sense? So I can also assert myself, that I can communicate with clarity. I can build trust by showing up as competent, someone who knows what they are saying, someone who is able not to speak from a point of opinion, but from the point of actual facts, arguments.
Facts and empathy, right? Because you know.
And also, of course, empathy. Yes, building connection in the first place.
You know, so looking at this kind of templates may seem, oh, there's a lot of work, but realistically, how much time would it take you to fill this out, or did it take you? You know, is this like an evening's worth or a week's worth? You know.
Well, it can be an exercise of 1 hour in which you are filling out with what you know currently, and of course, you need to have a lot of conversations and interviews to be able to fill some of these things out, because especially if you are new in the company, you don't know these people, and you can know, for instance, what would be a typical job to be done from a point of engineer or manager, but maybe that particular person has a very particular role. So best way to do it is to have proper conversations. And sometimes you pick up this information more naturally by having one-on-ones every 2 weeks, once a month, or in some regular chats, conversations, and you kind of understand what lies underneath the surface. And a lot of these things we can uncover by just talking, by just engaging as human beings.
So basically,
so it can be longer time then, of course,
exactly,
considering
right.
all of that.
You start with what you know, you keep it in your Figma, and you return to it, let's say, on a regular basis as you know something more, right? Expanding this map and knowledge you have, right, over time.
Yes.
Okay, so how did Nina approach it, right? So we see that her strategy here was to demonstrate impact using metrics they can relate to, and to run a workshop to achieve the shared understanding. And she was kind enough to share a couple of examples here on the slides that she used, so you can sort of see her approach and argumentation. And based on some of the examples you raised yourself, or the suggestions you gave for what would you do if you were Nina, have a look at this. And Nina, please tell us a bit more, and we are happy to hear your key takeaways from this. Did something about her approach surprise you? Did you learn something from this? Nina,
all right.
Wait.
So what we did, we ran series of workshops with that whole team in question, but not every single person in the team, but representatives of different functions. And we had them estimate the effort. Okay, what would be the effort of implementing this key screen in consisting of new functionalities that are planned for a future quarter? And how much time does it take from the design and engineering point of view in terms of story points and hours? And this visual on the left is designed based on our design system. So it's more generic, but it's more reusable. Hence, more time could be spent on something else. And then the second screen looks a bit more contemporary, I would say. It has different style of layout, more different logic of how elements are being layered. It's definitely on the path of something more next level, but there is a certain issue with how much time does it take. So we finally compiled learnings and we did a couple of key screens, not only those that you see here. And we realized that if we continue using the design system, we will save 84% of time for design work and 50% of time for technical work. And that means that teams will have more time to actually work on other critical issues and customer requirements that are not about is the form with square or with rounded edge and is this layout or that layout, but it's about some critical functionalities that drive competitive edge. And in the end, we didn't impose on them they should do this or that. We just said this is the impact and this is also the risk. So you are most free to just abandon the design system and just do your own thing, but this is what will happen. At some point, you will significantly drop in your efficiency and you won't really have time to follow up on customer requirements and you will become your own bottleneck. And then you can imagine what they decided. And from some of the suggestions that I've seen, I've seen similar, right? Diana, yeah, exactly. You mentioned, yeah, to have people who actually understand the complexities, exactly, and this is kind of people that we had. And also, Agnese, what you said, the relevance of having a consistent design system, in our case, of course, it wasn't super consistent to the brand. This is a conversation for something else, but it's about, in the end, design system backs their main goal, which is driving competitive edge. And what Jonas wrote, a roadmap for vision, how it could look in the future. We actually did that as part of another initiative. We created a whole redesign case and showed how it could look in a moonshot level, like something maybe more far in the future, and something that is more realistic, not yet there, not tomorrow for sure, but maybe 4 to 6 months from now. And it was successful in that sense. We convinced them to stick with the design system.
You know, important thing though when doing that was, right, that you limited the scope, right? It's not like you went and built the new design system, right? It was more certain representative screens and creating mock-ups of how it could be like, or am I mistaken here?
So this was just, yeah, those here were designs from the designer in that team who provided an alternative, but that would be still based on, let's say,
middle step, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it had some differences. It was still, a lot of things are similar, but it was still like a new version of it. And this person just did a couple of screens as part of the whole exercise. Of course, it wouldn't make sense to create the whole thing and then spending time on something that may not be executed in the end. So this is very important. We need to be very incremental and very aware of our time. And by saying no and by being smart with use of our time and resources is also backing our credibility as someone who is up for a challenge, right?
Yeah, yeah. Well, Nina, great job in your case, and also great job everyone with your suggestions. Really, really nicely came together. So, you already touched on this, but there is one final part we have here, which is the fact that ultimately, you know, stakeholders are people. We are people, and we we can talk as much about their professional roles and work and jobs to be done, but sometimes you just need to connect on a human emotional level, right? And even someone that may be seem like it's very foreign to you, there are ways to find that common ground, right, Nina? So this is an example again from the workshop, but maybe you can take us through on how you can create that kind of common ground.
So there are so many different opportunities in which we can interact with our stakeholders, sometimes on a more personal level, sometimes in the context of a shared work stream or project that we are taking part of. But those are all opportunities in which we can learn about them and connect on a more human level. And finally, we are all humans underneath all these layers and roles and things that we are trying to achieve. And it's always easier if we just remember we are humans and seeing what do we actually have in common. Because it's when we talk about stakeholders, it feels like it's us versus them, us as designers. We are precious, we are different, unique way of thinking and all of that. And then they are stakeholders and they don't understand us and so on, right?
Yeah.
But we are just on the same ship. We are doing different things, but in the end, we are trying to do the same thing. But also maybe there are some things that we have in common that we can leverage. For instance, maybe we have a certain shared interest. Maybe we have the same amount of years in the field, but just different fields. Or maybe we have a same communication style. Maybe our stakeholder is more outspoken and we are not, which can cause us to feel like going out of our comfort zone. But maybe there is also a way in which we can see what would be a better way to engage with them, how to talk with them, how to approach them. Maybe if they are not into conversations, maybe they're very busy and don't have any time, maybe email is the best way. Maybe they will appreciate if you share with them a couple of updates on what you're working on over email and keep them posted. So you build a rapport, even though you're not necessarily collaborating. And then what is the culture around them? You won't, of course, investigate and interrogate them like that, but you will probably observe what is a culture by seeing how meetings are being conducted, how these people in the team talk to each other. Maybe they have a Slack that is very cold and very straightforward, and yours is like happy place full of emojis. So there are so many different things that we can just observe by spending some time.
And this
finally,
template, and this template here is again one of the exercises we do here at ScreenSaverz. You know, just go through what you know for the stakeholder on the left, on the right, for of course what you know about yourself, and things will start to come, you know, to you, like what's common. Just put, you know, you just write it down in the middle, and suddenly there's one or maybe many ways that you can actually create that contact and start nurturing it.
Exactly.
All right, so we are limited in time, and of course there's so much more to talk about on this topic, Nina, but
yes,
I want to really thank you for sharing the example, your own example, and how these exercises can help. At this point, of course, we don't want to be the only ones talking. So, you know, if there are questions, observations, anything you've taken from today's session or would still like to touch on after the formal part, please let us know here. You can add a question or simply tell us, how was this session for you? We're looking forward to your feedback. Again, you can use the chat. You can also just talk to us here on the call.
And Adash, when will be the next session?
The next session is a meeting, or the lovely course that you are preparing for us, Nina?
No, the community session.
We will announce it. We have quite a few ideas, right?
Awesome. So staying all eyes and ears. And yeah, if you enjoy these templates, if you think you could apply them for your work, we prepared this whole section for you. Alaj, I think you need to
I will share it right away. Yes.
Exactly. So just to make it easier for you, it's cleaned up from examples, and you can just copy paste the whole section inside a clean FigJam file that you are using, and use it for your own project. And we hope it will be useful for you to kind of structure all these things that are happening, you know, like all this information that you are dealing with, or maybe if you're working on multiple projects, you can simply have it, the whole session for a project itself. So feel free.
And the session, so this file will stay online after the event, and in the end of the event, we will also link the recording to it. So here we had a Zoom call link. We will then add the recording, so you can come back and refer to it or share it with, you know, whoever you think may benefit. If, however, you hit a snag or just want to delve more into stakeholder management, of course, you know, you do not have to just limit yourself to the event or this materials. You can actually, you know, join Nina, work with Nina, get guidance from Nina as part of the stakeholder engagement course that we are preparing. You have the link to the course here, and you can click on it and enroll there. The deadline for enrollments is November 19th, and then Nina will start on November 22nd. More information about the course is there, but there's always the option to also take it into individual hours if necessary for more complex or, you know, business things that you may not want to share in the group. So have a look. We are all available for questions around that, especially Nina as the mentor. And if you're not yet on our Slack, please join us. There is a link to it on the website as well, and you can get contact to all of us there. So are there any open questions still?
I saw one. I just wanted to quickly follow up. We still have Aleš. So software for measuring the design system usability. Quick answer, we didn't have any software. We ran our own workshop, our own custom-made series of workshop where we had a predefined scenario, what we need to do as a whole group. And in the end, we ask everyone to give their own estimates of each individual building block in the screen, so we could finally compile what would be amount of effort if we go with option A versus option B. That's it.
So Aleš was also asking about the software. Is there a specific software?
Yeah, that's what I just said. There is no software.
Sorry, I thought it's a different question.
We did it in Miro.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks for joining us, Jonas.
So this is the formal part done. I will stop recording. I do not have to stop sharing if you guys still want to stay in the file, and we go into the informal part when, again, you're free to continue being here and ask questions. We're probably going to be around at least for another 15 minutes, Nina, if that's okay with you and your time.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so what time and hour will the course be taking